There's a pattern that keeps repeating. Someone works for 20 years. Their salary increases steadily. They don't overspend. They don't make reckless decisions. By all conventional measures, they're doing everything right. And yet, the gap between them and those at the top doesn't shrink. It widens. Most people believe in a straightforward equation: work harder, save more, spend less. And over time, financial stability will follow. It's the story we hear in classrooms, in career advice columns, in conversations at dinner tables. Effort plus discipline equals progress. But there's a strange contradiction. Those who follow this formula often find themselves falling behind, not ahead. Meanwhile, others seem to move forward with less visible effort. The math doesn't add up. If the equation were correct, the results would match. They don't. This isn't an isolated case. It's not about one person making a mistake or missing an opportunity. This is a pattern that repeats across generations, across countries, across different economic conditions. Look around. People who trade their time for wages find that their income grows slower than the prices of the things they want to buy. People who save money in cash watch its purchasing power decline year after year. People who try to accumulate enough to buy assets discover that asset prices rise faster than their ability to save. These aren't random events. They happen in a specific order. There are always people who arrive first. There are always people who arrive last, and where someone stands in that line doesn't seem to depend on how hard they work. Something is operating beneath the surface. A mechanism, one that was identified centuries ago, explains why effort and outcome don't always align. It's rarely mentioned in ordinary conversations about personal finance. It doesn't appear in most advice about budgeting or saving, but it shapes the landscape that everyone is navigating. Understanding what's happening requires looking at how this mechanism works, not at what individuals are doing wrong. That's where we begin. The mechanism has a name. It's called the Cantillon Effect, named after Richard Cantillon, an economist who lived in the 18th century. Cantillon observed something that most people at the time didn't think to question. When new money enters an economy, it doesn't arrive in everyone's hands at the same moment. Some people receive it first, some receive it later, and some never receive it at all. From this simple observation, he drew a conclusion that still holds today: those who access new money earliest benefit the most. Those who access it last bear the greatest cost. The order of access determines who gains and who loses. This isn't about luck or talent. It's about position. New money doesn't appear evenly distributed across all bank accounts. It originates from a specific point, typically through central banking systems and large financial institutions. The starting point is not the wallet of an ordinary worker. It's not the savings account of a household. It begins somewhere far removed from the daily financial lives of most people. This matters because whoever stands closest to that origin point gets to act first. Those nearest to the point of origin, major financial institutions, large investment funds. Corporations with direct credit relationships are the first to receive new money. Here's what's critical about this moment: when the first group receives new money, prices in the broader economy haven't adjusted yet. Everything is still valued based on the old supply of money: a piece of land, an apartment, a share in a company. All are still priced at their previous levels. The first group now holds new money in a market where prices haven't caught up. What happens next is not complicated. They acquire assets at prices that don't yet reflect the increase in money supply. They're not predicting the future. They're simply arriving early. New money doesn't stay with the first group forever. It starts flowing outward through loans, investments, business transactions, payroll. But the flow isn't even. Money reaches places close to the source before it reaches places farther away. A large investment fund receives it before a small business. A small business receives it before a salaried employee. An employee in a major financial center may receive it before someone in a rural area. Each time money changes hands, something has already been extracted. The earlier recipients have already used that money to acquire assets. The later recipients must now purchase the same assets at higher prices. The transfer has already begun, silently, invisibly. Once new money has spread widely enough, the market begins to respond. Asset prices rise. Goods become more expensive. Services cost more. This is the moment most people start to feel something has changed. But for those who received money last or didn't receive it at all, the adjustment comes at a cost. They still hold the same amount of old money. Yet that money now purchases less than it did before. A person can work at the same intensity, save with the same discipline, and still find their purchasing power diminished. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they stood further back in line. By now, the early group owns assets purchased at lower prices. As prices rise, the value of those assets increases. Their position strengthens. The later group faces a different reality. They must now buy assets at elevated prices or find themselves unable to buy at all. The gap between the two groups widens. And here's where it compounds. The assets the first group owns can be used as leverage to access even more new money in the next cycle. When the process repeats, they stand at the front of the line again. The distance doesn't close. It's maintained and often expanded with each cycle. The Cantillon Effect is not a judgment. It's a description of sequence. New money enters the economy unevenly. Position in the sequence determines who benefits from old prices and who bears the burden of new ones. This happens not because of intention or conspiracy, but because of how money flows through systems. Understanding the mechanism doesn't require agreeing with it or opposing it. It simply means seeing how the process unfolds. Most conversations about personal finance focus on individual behavior, spending habits, saving rates, investment choices. Those things matter, but they occur within a larger structure. And that structure has its own logic. The Cantillon Effect is one description of that logic. It's been observed for nearly 300 years. The scale and speed have changed. The underlying sequence has not. When someone works hard and still falls behind, the explanation may not lie in their effort. It may lie in where they stand relative to where new money begins its journey. The mechanism becomes clearer when placed side by side with expectations. In theory, when the total amount of money in an economy increases, and if that money were distributed evenly, everyone would receive a proportional share. Prices would rise, but so would income. Purchasing power would remain balanced. No one would gain an unfair advantage. No one would fall behind through no fault of their own. The relative positions between groups would stay the same. Those with less would still have less. Those with more would still have more. But the distance between them wouldn't stretch. That's the theory. In practice, new money doesn't spread evenly. It travels through specific channels. It touches certain groups before others. The first group can act while prices remain unchanged. The last group can only act after prices have already adjusted. Even when the total amount of money increases, the benefits don't distribute equally. Some watch the value of what they own climb higher. Others watch the value of what they've saved buy less and less. And same expansion. Different outcomes depending on position. Consider two people with identical incomes, identical savings, identical financial goals. The only difference: one works in an industry closely connected to credit flows. The other works in an industry farther removed. When new money enters the system, The first person's industry is among the earliest to receive it. Their company expands. Compensation rises. Investment opportunities appear before prices adjust. This person can acquire an asset, a property, an investment, at a price that hasn't yet reflected the new money supply. The second person's industry receives new money later. Their income rises more slowly, or not immediately at all. By the time they've saved enough to consider buying the same asset, the price has already moved. What the first person purchased at the old price now costs more. After one cycle, the first person holds an asset that has appreciated. The second person is still accumulating, chasing a price that has shifted upward. After several cycles, the distance between them grows, not because one worked harder or saved more diligently, but because they stood in different places when the money arrived. Consider someone with savings enough to purchase a specific asset. They plan to save a little longer, building a margin of safety before committing. The ratio between their savings and the asset's price is within reach. The goal feels attainable. Then, new money enters the system. Asset prices rise faster than the pace of saving. The same person with the same savings following the same discipline now finds the goal further away than before. They didn't make a mistake. They didn't change their behavior. But the distance between where they stand and where they want to be has grown. It's as if they're running toward a finish line that keeps moving forward, not because they slowed down, but because the line shifted. None of these illustrations are meant to assign blame or declare right and wrong. They simply place two versions of reality next to each other, what's expected and what occurs. The mechanism doesn't require bad actors. It doesn't require intention. It operates through sequence and timing. Each person can observe their own position and draw their own conclusions. There are a few assumptions worth examining. The common narrative suggests that financial outcomes directly reflect how hard someone works. Those who get ahead must have worked harder. Those who fall behind must not have tried enough. But effort doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens within a context. The same amount of effort applied in different positions within the flow of money produces different results. Effort remains necessary, but it's not the only factor shaping outcomes. When I first encountered this idea, it was uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that results are purely a function of input. That belief gives a sense of control. But the more I observed, the harder it became to ignore the role of position. Many people assume the path to financial stability runs through higher income. A bigger salary, a larger bonus. More hours worked, and wealth will naturally follow. But income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is money that flows through. Wealth is what stays and has the capacity to grow in value over time. A person earning a high income but never converting it into assets that hold or increase value is still running on the same treadmill. The speed is higher. The destination remains unclear. This distinction rarely appears in conversations about career progress or financial success, but it changes what questions are worth asking. The usual view treats inflation as a neutral force. Prices go up, and everyone feels the impact the same way. But inflation is not neutral in how it distributes consequences. Those who own assets before prices rise see those assets gain value. Those who hold only cash see that cash buy less. Same phenomenon. Different effects depending on what someone holds and when they acquired it. Instead of asking only, how can I earn more? There's another question. Where does money flow, and where do I stand in that flow? Instead of measuring progress purely by hours worked, there's the question of where that work sits within the broader system. Instead of treating income as the finish line, there's the question of whether income is being converted into something that endures. These aren't answers. They're reordering of priorities. Seeing things differently doesn't automatically lead to acting differently, but it changes what becomes visible. And sometimes that's the first thing that shifts. The Cantillon Effect is not a recent discovery. It was observed and documented nearly 3 centuries ago. What has changed since then is not the mechanism itself, but the speed and scale at which it operates. Money now moves faster than ever before. Decisions that once took months unfold in days. The cycles compress, but the sequence remains the same. Some receive first, some receive last. Position still determines outcome. Knowing that a mechanism exists doesn't mean it can be changed. But not knowing means navigating a system without seeing its full shape. Most financial conversations focus on what individuals do, their habits, their choices, their discipline. Those things are real. They matter. But they take place inside a structure that has its own patterns. Ignoring the structure doesn't make it disappear. It just makes it invisible. The Cantillon Effect is one lens for seeing that structure. It's not the only lens, but it offers a language for something many people feel, but rarely name the sense that the rules aren't quite what they appear to be. This is one of many mechanisms operating beneath the surface of everyday financial life. If this way of looking at things opened a new angle, there may be others worth exploring. This channel exists to name those mechanisms, not to give advice, but to provide language for what's already happening. The journey to understand continues in the next video. Thanks for watching.